Hello, this is Wmpyr. All right, so this video is inspired by my student who's over in Texas. I am now in Arkansas. And anyway, he sent me a text, and we've been talking about some combat sports styles that he's interested in. So, general rule of thumb is that I recommend people to train in combat sports. Yeah, I do. But at the same time, I'm very worried that you're going to get hurt because it is a sport. And the one most consistent thing about any sport is injuries. So, injuries to me is not worth it. It doesn't make sense that you're going to learn good stuff, but you're risking your body. No, that's stupid. Actually, I dislike that very very much. When I was young and dumb and carefree and thought I was invincible, sure, it works. But especially now, there's no way, no way. It's a terrible idea. So um, I do recommend combat sports, but do it when you're young and try to get out of it as fast as you can. Like do as much as you can safely, and then get out as quick as you can because it's you stay in there long enough, you're gonna get injured. Just the way it is. Okay. So anyway, um, the argument is people tend to either be completely for combat sports and they think it's the best. And when it comes to martial arts, it's that is what works. Nothing else works. Everything else is a lie. That's the best, right? Probably someone like Joe Rogan thinks that way, and there's a lot of Joe Rogan fans, and they think that way, okay? And then there's the other side where they go, combat sports is a sport. You're gonna get yourself killed on the streets. So they're like, no way, right? So two opposite spectrums, right? And then there's people that they're like, neither is the answer. You should cross train. You should do both. You should do combat sports and non-sport martial arts. Okay. I disagree with all three. Okay. And the reason being is, I don't think combat sports is the end all be all. I don't think it's the best. And then at the same time, I don't think that the non sport styles are the best either. And then learning both, to me, in a way, can be bad because you're just going to increase your knowledge base, and therefore, a good way to show someone nothing is to show them everything. So then you're just going to have a whole bunch of stuff and just be confused, and you don't know how to use it. Like you went to the hardware store and bought a whole bunch of tools, and then you don't know how to use any of it. That's not the answer. You know what I mean? So it's not that I'm against cross training, because I'm a cross training person. That's how I've developed myself on this martial arts journey that I'm on, is cross training. So I'm for it, but you have to understand how to do it and how not to do it. And how not to do it, I'm explaining, is that you don't want to just increase. So Bruce Lee talked about the opposite, that it should be a daily decrease. That makes sense. Okay. So at the end of the day, I want, all this stuff, it needs to make sense. So the combat sport people, they look at traditional martial arts and they go, that stuff doesn't make sense. When you really, really get down to it, the stuff that they're teaching, where you do this and that, and you break the arm, you break the neck, and they're like, no, that doesn't happen. I agree with that. I mean, you watch movies and they show stuff where they break the neck like easy, and that's just not the case. It's very, very difficult, or pretty much impossible, to do something like that, and that's the truth. So I agree with that point of view. Okay, now at the same time, do I think combat sports is 100% the way to go? Do I think it's superior? No, I don't. Because when we're talking about combat sports, on a one-to-one type of fight, Is it effective? Yeah, absolutely. It's super strong. Yeah, it could definitely be maybe the best of what martial arts has to offer on a one versus one fight, right? Um, Especially when we're talking without weapons. Now, that I think creates the confusion where people go, that's why it's the best. It's the best that martial arts has to offer. You know, I think that's why people go to that conclusion. And you got to understand, right? Like, for example, I'm 50 years old. Does it make sense for me to go to an MMA gym and train with these young, up and coming people that aspiring to be fighters and get banged up with them? With these 20-year-old, pit bulls and heel hook each other. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I'm gonna get injured bad. Same with if I go Muay Thai kickboxing with these guys, and exchange calf kicks and stuff and headshots. It's I'm gonna end up in the hospital. That don't make sense. So for them, good for them. And when I was younger, I did it too. And yeah, I regret it in some ways because I was dumb and I did acquire injuries and I did stupid stuff. But, um, for my small circle, my small pond, uh, I was pretty successful. I was the big fish in a small pond. So anyone that does MMA, can they achieve that? I'm sure easily. Well, depends on the person, of course, but I think, because I don't think I'm anything special. So if I could do it, other people can do it too. You're gonna have to commit, and you're gonna have to, get creative and put a lot of effort into it. But it's doable. It's doable. Now, for me to be UFC champion, not doable. That's for me to be an Olympic athlete, not doable. For me to be a special forces, not doable. Those are all things that are just way beyond my scope. But underneath that, like I said, in a local venue, could I have won, maybe even become a champion? I think it was possible. I really do. And I'm not just saying that because I did fight people, not sanctioned and not officially, but I did go up against people, challenge matches against former champions or champions even at that time, and they're local champions. Okay, so they're not. Don't think UFC level or anything like that, but local level champions, right? And let's also say within the state, so state level, not national level, right? Not NCAA class, no, state level guys. I was able to do very well against. So was it possible for me to be like a state champion? I think so. I'd like to think so. Now, I never came home with a belt or medals, so I cannot confirm that. So as of right now, I'm just talking out of my ass, so to speak. But take that for a grain of salt. I'm just saying if I think I could have done it, it's possible for other people too. Okay. So anyway, let's put that aside, and that means I think you're pretty formidable even at that level, even though it's way below the UFC. To me, that's still formidable. I wouldn't want to go up against someone like that. Someone who's done a couple of Muay Thai smoker events and they did pretty well or whatever that they've done that. I don't want to go up against someone like that. Or someone who's done local BJJ tournaments and they're consistent or whatever. I don't want to go up against a competition team member like that. No, on the street, no, of course not. I don't. So it's formidable, is what I'm saying. Now let's go to the street perspective. So the people that are saying that combat sports is ineffective in the street is just not true. Look it up on YouTube and you'll see successful examples. They exist, period. Whether you like it or not, it exists. Don't ignore it. there's a famous footage of one where the guy clearly has boxing training. He gets jumped by like three guys, and he knocks one or two guys out, and the other guy isn't able to hurt him. So he's very successful. That being said, there's also examples where they're not successful. Two very heartbreaking ones. I think one was a school shooter came into the high school, and a high school wrestler, I think, went for a double leg, and then he got shot, killed. Okay. Um, Whew, it's hard to talk about, man. And the other one is Muay Thai champion. This guy, this woman was her purse was taken, so she was robbed, and the Muay Thai champion went after the the bad guy, and he got shot and died. So both of those ended tragically, where the two heroes, yeah, let me call them heroes, they died. Unfortunately, I wish it was a different world, but they didn't make it. You know. Uh, so anyway, what I'm trying to say is that argument of saying that combat sports don't work in the street, not true. Okay, but that doesn't mean that combat sports will work every time. So please understand that as well. Okay. So as far as cross training in both, I really uh, feel that a good way once again to show someone nothing is to show them everything. So what Bruce Lee said was the opposite, which was you need to do a daily decrease. So basically, what he's saying, from my understanding, is quality over quantity. Okay. So I agree with him 100%. I don't think he's against cross training. I mean, look at the guy. Look at his books. It encourages cross training, and that's part of what helped me, because I cross train. I follow the same path. But he's talking about, don't ever forget, quality over quantity. Okay. So anyway, to solve this dilemma about sports and non-combat sports, right, is, I think, once again, to understand that combat sports can be brutally effective in a one-on-one fight, especially without weapons. Okay. And that's almost like your core DNA. That doesn't change whether you're in warfare or like with assault rifles and heavy gear and a helmet and all that. When you do this with someone, it's still gonna be very crappy MMA. Now you may be limited because of your protective gear and your weapons and all that, but it's still gonna be based off of that. And we could go back to knights in armor. We could go even further back, just people with spears and half naked and fighting like that. To me, it's still going to be based off of this kind of not the advanced MMA stuff, but the basic MMA. Especially when you get two beginners and say fight in MMA rules, what you're going to see is going to be fairly consistent, because that's the way humans will fight. That's the way humans will move. So it offers a very core base, right? But in a real life situation, it to me is very complex, where there's multiple things that can happen. And from my experience, I can tell you that living in bad neighborhoods, and also having a security job, where it's kind of a pretty rough security job that I did for a short time, I could tell you that if you fight, you lose. Legally, physically, even mentally, because I'm not one that gets off to that. If I punch somebody, I mean, like, training is separate, and matches is separate. But if I get mad at you, or you're trying to hurt me, and I'm punching you, that doesn't give me a boner. You know what I mean? That I feel yucky afterwards. And I think that shows to a certain extent, a healthy psychology. There's some people that get off to that, and I think, dude, you should. That's not a good thing, you know. Now, I do believe in a switch where you have this switch where you could turn on the so-called killer instinct, which I don't like to call it the killer instinct. I call it the animal instinct because for me it's about survival. But you know, imagine a lion tearing up a gazelle, right? But they're doing it for survival. It's not personal. It's not to be nasty or hatred or temporary insanity. You know, it's none of those things because I lost my cool because you flipped me off in traffic and now I got to take you out. It's nothing dumb like that, you know. It's about survival, um, and it's no pretentious respect issue or something like that. A lot of street people, thugs and stuff like to say respect. He didn't show me respect, so I got to teach him respect. You know, to me, that's a misconception of what respect really is. So anyway, yeah, in the street, I never got into a physical fight confrontation. I've been asked, they're like, you teach self-defense this, how many street fights have you, you know, I could just see the way they're asking too. They're just like, how many street fights have you been in, you know? And the answer is no, zero. And that is not okay, therefore you're not qualified. No, in fact, I think in some ways that makes me more qualified because that is my answer and that is what I teach and that is what I recommend. And to not fight, to survive and to get out of there, right? And you go, well, then you have nothing to teach because all the other person has to do is just run, right? Your students, they just tell them to run. Well, there's plenty of situations where you're caught in a conversation, you're caught in a bad spot and cornered, you're just caught. And in those kinds of situations, you want to get to the point where you can go to a position where you can run away. And I teach that. So that's my self-defense. And what I see on YouTube is, you know, this guy is going to jump you. Before they jump you, you jump him and destroy him. And it sounds wonderful, marketing and all that. How many times you been in a bad situation and that went through your mind? Okay, I guarantee you it won't come out, especially if you have a healthy psychology, your mind is normal. You can't do it. That's unusable, right? That's unusable. And that's not how our mind works. For that to happen, you got to be walking around like a predator. You know, you got to be walking around and this guy comes up to you and you're like, you know, you're already ready to destroy this guy. You're just looking for the time to do it. That is not normal. And yeah, good luck trying to access those kinds of skills. And they'll teach you, you know, stab him in the throat, this, that, you know, pull out your knife and attack the guy. And not coming out. Not coming out. In a real life situation, a lot of times you don't know what the hell's going on. Even if you do know that this guy is suspicious, there's red flags popping in your head, even then your instinct is to try to avoid that. So the important part is, you know, you don't want to go and make this person angry and then you end up in this, right? So that's your instincts, and those are good instincts. But because of that, people will start to become defensive and weak and vulnerable. They make themselves vulnerable. They don't realize, but they're trying to avoid the conflict so much that they get weaker and weaker and weaker positions. They put themselves at a disadvantage and then they get attacked. This is the wrong usage of defense. This is the wrong usage of that. This is not proper defense. So, and I hate using the word defense because once I say defense, people will misunderstand that. It is, for me, what makes sense is I got to go back to FMA, Filipino martial arts, and we call it defang the snake. And I feel like defang the snake is excellent because in that sense, what is defang the snake? defang the snake is not offense. It's not defense. It's something completely like new. It's like its own thing. So we defang the snake. And where does all that come from? It comes from survival tactics. Where does survival tactics come from? Guerrilla warfare tactics. So the Filipinos were excellent with guerrilla warfare. And, in order to pull off guerrilla warfare, you have to survive. That is the core essence of guerrilla warfare tactics, is survival. So all that to me with FMA and then now using it for the street, it just worked out for me personally. It makes total sense in that. So what I'm trying to say is that my mindset is, I hate to say it, you guys are going to see it as defense, but for me, I see it as survival. And it's not, like I said, the wrong kind of defense where I'm like, oh no, I don't want any trouble, no, no, no. And then I get destroyed. That's not it. I'm like, no, I don't want any trouble. I'm trying to de-escalate. I'm trying to look for a better position to be in. I'm trying to get out of this tight spot. So it's active. It's aggressively active in that sense, not aggressively active and hostile towards them. It's aggressive in a sense that I'm trying to improve my situation, if that makes sense. So that is misunderstood with the defense part. And a Jeet Kune Do instructor, this is the last part. A Jeet Kune Do instructor was attacked, and in his mind, and look, he learned the RAT system. He is a RAT instructor. Okay. So RAT is Rapid Assault Tactics, right? In his mind, he wasn't able, because he went to that, I don't want this to turn ugly. I don't want to destroy this guy. Why can't we be friends? Because he was thinking that it never came out. And he believes that was his own mistake, that he believes that it was a choice that he made. So he feels like he had control and that he had the choice to make that decision to go, oh, I should have just used the RAT right away. That was my own fault that I got attacked, and this guy had a knife and I got badly injured, really bad. That was all my fault because I should have accessed the RAT. And I'm saying, no, you weren't able to access the RAT because you weren't able to, because in real life, you're not going to be able to. And I know for a lot of people that goes, what? If you're ever in those kinds of situations, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? So when I'm confronted, when I'm a security guard and I'm seeing two guys jump a dude in front of my face, right? And they're brawling right there, right in front, and it's my job to stop that, right? Am I going to use the RAT and destroy all three? I guarantee you, my mind, it didn't come out. I never thought that, And same, like, I remember, I think it was well past midnight. This, I think he was drunk. I'm pretty sure he was drunk. This drunk dude came up to me, and he was pretty much harassing me. My knife came out and everything. He didn't see it. It's concealed and all that. So I had it concealed, but it was fully out. The blade, everything, out, ready to go. And I'm doing my best not to use it. But that doesn't mean I'm putting myself in a weak position. I know I'm in a strong position. I know I'm strong. I know my weapon's strong. I'm in a very powerful position, but I am not there to just go off on him, and then I would not be able to make this video because I would still be in jail, right? So in that situation, I did everything I could to where I don't want to use it, but if it escalated, and it looked like it was if it was gonna escalate, that I will have the blade and I will be able to protect myself. And I was in a corner, so I didn't even know how many of them were. There could have been others, but it was just that person. And fortunately, this person was getting angry at me for really no reason. Is messed up in the head. yeah, luckily nothing happened, you know, but that's the way to handle this stuff, is that you don't want this stuff to happen. And if it does, that it is not me aggressively going after him with my blade like this, and then I destroy him and make mincemeat. That is a psychopath, a sociopath, you know. And yeah, I'm sorry, it don't make sense. Here, when we're talking like this, or you're typing on your keyboard, you can, it sounds great. It sounds like, oh, this guy came up to me, he was aggressive, I didn't know what's up, and so, you know, I had to take him out before he took me out, kind of thing. It's just like I said, be in those situations, you know, be in those situations, and you'll see. To go from a situation where you're confronted, so you're in a weak position, and then you're going to suddenly change that to where you're going to destroy this person, it don't make sense. And if not, if they're in a weaker position than you are, and you're in a more stronger position, and for you to just take them out before they take you out, is once again, that is sociopathic. Okay, so your brain, your whole being will fight against your own moves, and it won't come out, is what I'm saying. And yeah, I've even been in a position, my very first street fight, pretty much my first and last street fight, right? Um, Actual, you know, because I'm not talking about ones where this guy messed with me, so I grabbed the guy and I kneed him and I threw him up against the wall, and then that was it. To me, that's not a street fight. Okay, and there was another situation where a football player, I remember, he came running after me for no reason, because he's crazy and he's a bully. And I used the Aikido move, and I just moved out of the way, redirected him. He ran into the wall and shook the whole classroom. This was in high school. And then he just sat back down like nothing happened. That took like half a second. To me, that's not a street fight. Okay, so both of those to me are not street fights, even though I was in a physical confrontation. So what I do classify as a street fight was in junior high school, my first and last street fight, so-called. Like I said, after that, I've had plenty of challenge matches, and then I've also had plenty of situations on the street where people came up to me, or you know, like that example I told you, where I saw two dudes beating the snot out of this one guy right in front of my face, and like I said, I was supposed to be involved. Or I remember like five high school punks. You know, they're all built like adults, you know, and they're just bored rich kids. You know, I think they're on the football team or something, and they're just starting a brawl where I was doing security, and I'm supposed to stop that, and they're looking at me like, you want some rent-a-cop, you know? So being in situations like that, you know, I can tell you from those kinds of experiences that no, you don't fight. Even my security company told me, if you fight, you end up in court, you're all alone. We're not going to back you up. That's all on you, and we'll probably fire you, kind of thing. That's what they told me. So. So pretty much fighting is losing. If you fight, forget about you beat up the guy or save the day or whatever. You lose, period, if you fight. So I understood that. You know, I learned that. I learned that lesson. You know. So anyway, I'm going off on tangents, so I apologize. I forgot what I was talking about. But anyway, this is it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.